Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our session is about to begin. Please be seated and switch your mobile phone to silent mode. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Art Hong Kong's International Art Forum, organized by the Bohemia Culture Group and co-presented by the China Young Leaders Foundation and Jiguzai. Today, we are very honored to have Dr. Louis Ng, Museum Director of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, Dr. Joost Schokkenbroek, Director of the Hong Kong Maritime Museum, Dr. Florian Knothe, Director of the University Museum and Art Gallery at the University of Hong Kong. I would also like to welcome our moderator, Dr.焦天龙, Head Curator of the Hong Kong Palace Museum, to discuss the topic of the internationalization and contemporaneity of museums in Hong Kong. I'll now pass the time to Dr. Zhao.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Museum Director Forum. My name is Tianlong Jiao. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of the Art Hong Kong to invite me to moderate this forum. It is my privilege and honor to facilitate the discussion of these three very distinguished museum directors in Hong Kong, Dr. Louis Wu 博士 and Dr. Joost Schokkenbroek, Xiao 博士 and Dr. Florian Knothe, 罗博士. These three gentlemen are in charge of three very important museums in Hong Kong. So chronologically, the Hong Kong University Museum Art Gallery is the oldest continuously operated museum in Hong Kong. And in comparison, the Hong Kong Palace Museum is the youngest, only 4 months old. And the Maritime Museum of Hong Kong is in the middle. So together, these three museums represent some of the most important aspect or episode of the museum history in Hong Kong. So it's very exciting that we can get the three of them together today. Now, here's my personal connection with all of them. I'm now working at the Hong Kong Palace Museum, so obviously Louis is my boss. And when I came to work at the Hong Kong Maritime Museum in 2013, I think Florian also came in the same year to become the director of the Hong Kong University Art Museum Gallery. And incidentally, maybe not incidentally, when I came back to Hong Kong to work at the Hong Kong Palace Museum last year, Joost also came at the same time. We quarantined at the same time. So you can... So I hope you're not confused. All I want to say is we're all girlfriends, and it is my pleasure to facilitate that discussion today. I do have a list of questions for them to address. But before I do that, I want to invite all of them, each one of them, to give a brief introduction of their museum and maybe themselves. And to follow the Chinese ritual, we will begin the oldest museum, Dr. Florian Knothe.
Thank you, Tianlong. Thank you very much. I thank the organizers and especially also Tianlong for inviting me to be here. Most of you know the University Museum at Hong Kong U, and I just briefly wanted to speak about some of the things that connect us with Hong Kong and some of the ways we want to move and think forward. I will skip most of this, but I just wanted to add that the most important thing for us going forward and over the last few years has really been that we add education to everything we do at the museum. Education on campus and education off campus. We show exhibitions in the galleries. This hasn't stopped at all. We did as much during the last 3 years that we could, and many of you have been with us. We do digital exhibitions with the physical exhibition so that there's a lot of coexistence. I don't want to say one-in-one copy online, but actually curated exhibitions that differ slightly, so the physical and the digital differ a little bit. We've been doing this for a while, but the pandemic, ironically, has really helped us to develop a lot more virtual and related projects. We do many more videos for educational purposes and stream these. These are some of the topics we've done. And we continue to do education and outreach, both in the galleries for students at Hong Kong U and other Hong Kong universities, for school children, and of course for the general public. These are some of the projects and some of the hashtags we developed for them to communicate increasingly on social media. We develop more and more school contents for school groups coming to the galleries, and we develop more educational messages, I should say, that we distribute on social media. You see some of the contents here. We have a whole part of our website dedicated to education and work very actively with mostly local schools in Hong Kong to look at objects and elements in the museum, both the building, as you can see, in the collection and changing exhibitions that we can teach with. We use all sorts of social media, and we developed a new program, the UMAC Starts program, that looks at science, technology, and the arts together. We have a physical space for that in the beautiful and historic Phum Pin Shan building that wasn't open to the public until about 2.5 years ago. We developed a gallery for this program, and we developed quite a strong online presence for it. In the future, we will spend a lot more energy on a new program, the U Learning Lab, that is really dedicated to bringing more children to us virtually and physically, and we look forward to collaborating with partners in the museum community and, of course, in education. These are some of our future initiatives. Many of them started already, and we hope to bring them forward with your support. Thank you very much.
And next is the second oldest. Dr. Joost, please.
Thank you. Chosan, Leoma. Good morning to you all. This is about my knowledge of Cantonese, to be honest with you. It's a fantastic language, but I try to improve it on a daily basis, and I fail miserably. But I wanted to greet you in your language. It's great to be here. Thank you very much indeed to the organizers for inviting me for this morning's session. As Dr. Zhao mentioned, I'm a newcomer to the city. I arrived 1.5 years ago and took the helm of the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. Well, what about the Hong Kong Maritime Museum? I hear many people say, the Maritime Museum, where is it exactly? It's sort of a hidden gem. The good element is it's a gem. The bad part is it's hidden. It's at Pier 8. It's close to the Star Ferries at Pier 7. Say basically between Star Ferries and the wheel. And that's a bit of a problem as well. Lots of people will walk to the wheel, say from Wan Chai, and walk back. Many people will walk to Pier 7 or Pier 6 or Pier 5 to take the ferries. And that's where we are, somewhere in between. So I'd love to invite you to come over and tell your friends, and they will tell their friends that we are at Pier 8. And we'd love to welcome you there. The museum started in Stanley, in Murray House. Currently, the space where the museum had its galleries is now occupied by H&M, the fashion, clothing industry corporation. So they took away the K and the M, and the H and the M stayed there. And the museum started basically in 2003 in the minds of a number of captains of industry, of maritime industry. They realized, together with important people in the government, it's time for the Hong Kong to get its own maritime museum. In 2005, September 2005, the museum opened its doors in Stanley. let's see if this works. Yes, in Stanley. So that's on the left-hand side. Some of you may have been to the Murray House in Stanley. In 2011, 12 plans were made to move to Pier 8, and that's where we are currently located, as I mentioned. A much larger space, a much larger visitation, and many more galleries. And these galleries basically deal with the history, maritime history, not only of Hong Kong, I would say, but also of China and other places in the mainland between, say, roughly 1,000, 1,500 years ago and the present. But of course, with a very strong focus on Hong Kong, on this beautiful port city. We do connect with audiences, of course, as Dr. Knothe already indicated. We had our challenges as well during the COVID times, but we developed various programs to continue to connect with our audiences. And during the sessions, I would like bluntly and boldly to present a few slides as well to indicate what it is that we have done. So for now, I would like to go back one slide, if you don't mind, and just indicate, because you see in the title here, expanding our mandate. What do I mean by this? Before too long, we will have not only history programs and art programs, but also programs focusing on marine conservation, on marine science, on biodiversity. It's a fantastic biodiversity in Hong Kong waters, about 6,500 marine species in these coastal waters of Hong Kong. So there's a lot to learn, and we'd like to add that to our programming. So a bit more during the sessions, I think, if I'm allowed to elaborate on that. And for now, I would like to leave it to this. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Joost. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Louis Wong. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. We are the Youngers Museum. I'm not sure whether I'm the Youngers Museum Director. Among my good friends. Just I think that I would like to give you, because it's the Youngers, I will take a longer time, to take you through the museum. Firstly, I think that we officially opened in July this year after 5 years in making. And our mission is to become one of the world-leading museums committed to the study and appreciation of Chinese art and culture while advancing dialogue among world civilization. The second point is very important. That's, that is our aim, to bring world civilization and culture and art to Hong Kong. About our curatorship, we embrace new curative approaches, and we combine the Hong Kong perspective with a global vision to present the finest art objects from the Palace Museum and other important cultural institutions around the world. And also, through research, traveling exhibitions, and education and cultural and professional exchange program, we plan to build a very, very robust international partnerships and have Hong Kong as a global hub for art and cultural exchange. The museum, since we opened 4 months ago, the museum has received an overwhelming response from the public, attracting more than 560,000 visitors in the first 4 months. There are 3 cornerstones to the success of the museum. First, we have a spectacular architecture. The second, we have the riches of the art treasures from the Palace Museum on display. And the third cornerstone is the quality of our exhibitions with an innovative curatorial approach. The museum is marvelous piece of architecture designed by Rocco Yim, very, very famous local architect. The architecture design infused traditional Chinese visual and spatial aesthetics, drawing inspiration from the publicity and Hong Kong urban environment. The museum floors are connected vertically through 3 atriums, with each atrium facing a different directions. I think this is a very key architectural feature for the museum, the atrium. And the design of the ceilings of the 3 atriums is a contemporary reinterpretation of the Forbidden City's glass tile wood that not only that invokes a bamboo curtain in the shades and transparency, and also that's very, very elegant. So you can see there's very beautiful that inside. On second point about the exhibition on display, that over 900 art objects from the Palace Museum collections has been selected, including there's some architecture, court life, craftsmanship, and also ceramic, and also antiquities, paintings, calligraphy. Many of the objects of the most treasured pieces in Palace Museum collections. You can say that it's all national treasures. That's, I think, is a second cornerstone why I think that the museum can become successful. The third is our curatorship. We have in total 9 galleries. 5 galleries host a thematic exhibition, including the fascinating history, culture, and art collection of the city. You can see. And also, we have the 2 other galleries featuring art collections in Hong Kong and multimedia projects. The final 2 are devoted to special exhibition organized by us and or presented in partnership with other organizations. So, you have visited the Gallery 9 about horse exhibition. We brought 13 objects from the Louvre. And also last week, we just opened a new special exhibition about the Liechtenstein. And in the meantime, that we have already received a very important donation from several private collections, which foster a culture of collaboration and donation of the museum, and now us to take its place among several important art institutions in Hong Kong. But it's just, that a long road, to establish, the collection like the Hong Kong Museum. So beyond our exhibitions, we are also want to become an innovative leaders in museum education through developing fresh content, creative programming, new technologies, and partnership with local and global stakeholders. We have, I think, the largest dedicated museum learning space in Hong Kong, offering a wide range of education activities, including filming, screening, public lectures, student exhibition, workshop, courses, and also in the last few weeks, we launched our 2 flagship youth program. This is the Bi-City, the collaboration between Hong Kong and Beijing University students, and we soon launch another program about the student ambassadors. This is my quick introduction of the museum. Thank you, Tian Long.
Thank you very much, Louis. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for your brief introduction of your museum, and I should say my museum too. It is very encouraging to see each one of you is taking a lot of actions to actively engage your audience as well as the student overall. But to follow our theme for the Art Hong Kong, which is a dialogue between past and present to make Hong Kong more relevant to the international community. So I'd like to ask 3 of you some questions related to this subject. The first one, all of you, each museum has a very important collection of historical Chinese art and object, particularly the University Art Museum Gallery that started from collecting the bronzes, ceramic, and even oracle bones. We have some oracle bone inscription displayed at the Hong Kong Palace Museum at this moment. Those are the historic objects. So I would like to know more. What is your plan for today, in today's world? How do you make this historic collection connected with our audience today? In other words, how do you promote the audience awareness or understanding of such a remote old object? Shall I begin with Florian again? Sorry.
Yes, thank you so much. I think for us, it's natural to bring objects into the teaching we do and highlight cultural aspects that are special in Chinese culture and art, and teach those through the objects. We do that mostly in the physical spaces, but also online by now, and some of the new programs that I mentioned are very much geared towards that. The Science, Technology and Arts program, for example, looks at the materials and techniques, the workshop practices, so very deeply connected Chinese practices that led to the making of these objects. In addition to that, I think it's the mix of exhibitions, though, and you do this very brilliantly right now, too, and the ambition to bring in different visitors for different programs and exhibitions. So even in a small museum, we have, besides the permanent collection, 2 or 3 changing exhibitions, some with historic artifacts, some with modern and contemporary art. Half of our programming over the last 10 years has already been non-Chinese, so we always, in the last decade, stressed the international connection as well. So there again are historic objects juxtaposed sometimes from other cultures with our Chinese collections, and the same with modern and contemporary art. So I think it's much about the mix and the communication and the continuation, for example, in Chinese art making and techniques that we can teach that way. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. To connect the historical art with contemporary art, I think it is an approach I believe most museums are taking now. So my question for Joost, it is very encouraging you are expanding the museum's sort of mandate to include marine science. When I was there, only art and history of maritime. Yeah. Obviously, marine science is a big field. But I do know that your museum has a wonderful collection related to the maritime history of Hong Kong and China. So what are the programs that you have been doing to sort of make that relevant to our audience?
Well, thank you very much indeed for your question, Tianlong. I would like to just say a few words about what we did recently in order to hopefully make our collections relevant to everyone's personal and family histories here as well, because I think that's a very important element that museums should try to address as well. Make it what it is that you do, the education programs, the exhibitions, make it accessible to your audiences by trying to relate to people's own histories and do this hopefully in an engaging and, yes, even entertaining, educational way. If I may, I would like to give you 2 examples of what we did recently. We had an exhibition called Hong Kong's Maritime Miracle, the story of our city since 1945, quite recently. And through this exhibition, I feel our museum, the Hong Kong Maritime Museum, did something new to adding to its own history and its own take on how to run the business not only, but also trying to reach out to new audiences. What is that we did? We only used 25 artifacts for a fairly large exhibition instead of the dozens and dozens. I'm kind of old school. I like lots of artifacts, but occasionally you have to limit yourself. 25 artifacts spread out over 5 themes, and these 5 themes were supported by interactives and by a movie that was assigned by us to Hayward Mack, an award-winning movie director. And in that way, we try to bring a very complex and long story of how Hong Kong developed into the global maritime hub as we know it nowadays, by relating to people's own histories and make it a more personal story, at least trying to make it a more personal story. For instance, when it comes to the movie, you see some examples here of the interactives. When it comes to the movie, we introduced a fictionary character, Carmen So, who basically took our visitors by the hand through 4 generations of her own history, going back in time until 1945 after the Second World War, and by doing so hopefully related to elements that might be similar to some of the people in the audience's family histories as well. So try to connect via the artifact and technology and a movie and tell that story this way. And I must say, I believe we have been quite successful when I listen to the stories that we receive back from our audiences. So that's one way, trying to make your collections relevant by focusing on people's lives in Hong Kong and how that relates to the daily lives that we live. 3 key messages in this exhibitions were no shipping, no shopping. So the importance of the shipping industry for the shoes we wear, the suit that I'm wearing, the wine that I might drink. Secondly, connectivity. It might be that many of your family members here are connected with the maritime industry. And resilience. The problems that people had overcome over the last 77 years in order to build Hong Kong and into this global maritime hub. A second example, I will keep it brief, is we now have this fantastic opportunity. I already alluded to this in the mandate. We have this fantastic opportunity now that we have expanded our spaces within our space. It didn't outside the museum, but inside the museum we created new spaces to focus more than ever before on marine conservation, marine science education, in combination ideally with history and art. This way, we hope to expand our audiences, to create new school programs and educational programs, but also create new exhibitions this way as well. And granted, our collections will not always be sufficient to tell that marine conservation element, but we reach out to NGOs. We just hired a marine scientist at the Maritime Museum, which may sound strange, and I feel that we are one of the few maritime museums, actually I know we are one of the few maritime museums in the world where we create a permanent space to focus on climate change, oceanography, the blue ocean, green planet concepts, all the things that hopefully I certainly worry about on a daily basis. I don't hope that you worry, but you catch my drift. It's something that is our concern on a daily basis as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I visited the Miracle, Maritime Miracle exhibition with your invitation. I was very, very impressed with your innovative approach to connect personal story with the miracle of the Hong Kong maritime history. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That was a wonderful show. Now to my boss, and maybe to myself too. So we are the youngest museum in this dynamic city, and we're studying, collecting, build our own collection. So just to follow the same question line, we're working with the Palace Museum for sure, but we're also building our collection that focuses on the Chinese art and culture. So can you tell us more about your plan, maybe our plan, to how to sort of connect this historical art with our audience and further promote or connect the audience with our historical collection?
Yeah, thank you, Tian-Long. I think that about our own collections, up to now we have only less than 1,000 pieces item. I don't think that that we can only use this item. I think that to connect our audience for exhibition research. So I think our plan, I think that maybe in the next 10 or 20 years, I think we will concentrate, our exhibition in collaboration, in partnership with the Palace Museum in Beijing, bringing, the national treasure to Hong Kong. But the problem is that, that we are the youngest, not only in Hong Kong, the museum, also the youngest Palace Museum in China after Beijing and Taipei. How can we develop a very distinct identity which should differentiate from other two Palace Museums? So I think I have two concepts very important. It's about just like your theme, modernity, and also localization. How we can connect the past with the present, and also the connect this national treasure with a local audience. That's very important because, as you know, the Palace Museum collections I think the best, that is of Chinese art, that they are also our national treasure, and also magnificent, the essence of our 5,000 years of history. We can say they are all classical items in the history of Chinese art, but our museum, there's no need to be a classical museum, displaying Chinese antiquities in a traditional way. That's why I think you can see our opening exhibition. We adopt a very, the modern interpretations of all these, Chinese antiquities. Try to connect these antiquities, and relics with our modern day life, and then allow the visitors, to find their meanings, construct their meanings, So you can see, that we are a lot of we use a storytelling approach, a lot of story, about the objects on display, that build a bridge, between the object with, our modern day life. And also, most important, I think the second concept is about localization. That we need to, that engage our local curator, local artists, to take part in the interpretations of these objects. I think we have done very well. I think for one exhibition, it's about Gallery 5. It's about craft and contemporary design. We engage Stanley Wong, a very famous local designer architect. He used a contemporary design concept to rearrange all the objects according to his, the curatorial approach. And also, he also engaged three local artisans, that try to connect Qing dynasty craftsmanship with Hong Kong craftsmanship. I think it's very, a good approach, that people, that when they visit the exhibition, found the ownership, found the belonging. Oh, that's, that you can connect with the Forbidden City craftsmanship. Another gallery, I think that's, I can say is very successful, is about our Gallery 7, that we engage 6 local young artists to create some multimedia work in response to the Palace Museum collections. So this is very important, that we adopt, that a very, the contemporary interpretation of this, the classical item of Palace Museum, That's, the approach, we are taking.
Thank you, Louis. It's been a great journey to work with you to set up the Hong Kong Palace Museum, and I think to make us sort of relevant and meaningful, not only to Hong Kong, to nationally and internationally, is very important. Glad to be your team. To go back to our subject, I'd like to say museums, not only Hong Kong, but all over the world, are very important to the city. I sent you guys an email to say we are the bright spot of Hong Kong. I think it's fair to say that museums do represent a city on many aspects. We are in Hong Kong, but Hong Kong is not only a small place. It is very international. So I'd like each one of you to address that given Hong Kong's unique position nationally, globally, how do you plan, or whether you have done anything, that to promote your museum, in general, Hong Kong, to a much broader audience internationally, particularly under this COVID world when, everybody is locked down and a lot of restriction. So I'd like to know your action or your plan. Maybe go back to Florian.
Thank you, Tianlong. I think we've continuously tried to do that through the quality of our exhibitions, the word of mouth within Hong Kong, and then with attempts to work, of course, with the Hong Kong Tourism Board to spread the word. I think this is something that we should all jointly do, actually, see how the big art and culture community to which we all contribute, the wealth that we create, also the educational value that we create, is broadcasted outside of Hong Kong more. We've been doing this during the pandemic quite actively with online initiatives, also academic ones like lecture series and so on. But of course, nobody could come here. So now that we are at the brink of, change, I hope that the programming and the exhibitions and everything that we have developed, that we have been developing for years, that will become better known in the region. Abroad, I think, in the countries or the institutions and their communities with which we collaborate, whether they are artist communities or institutions abroad, I think we are known, but we need to see how this leads to a bigger knowledge about Hong Kong as a cultural hub. And I think we are all working on this so hard, so tirelessly. So it's the value is already created, and we are creating more and more and more every day. And I think jointly we will certainly be very, very strong together to create this image. All of our museums are so different. We share similarities. We have this devoted, affection for education, public education and formal education. And I think that's something that for us we do also with international partners, also by bringing in interns from other countries already again now, and by sending students abroad, of course. But I think this exchange and this knowledge exchange can only grow in the coming years when we overcome the pandemic and start traveling again.
Thank you, Florian. Yeah, we definitely look forward to that day when no restrictions at all, so that we can communicate and do exchange with all the museums all over the world. Now the question is to Joost. Maritime is about global. I know there's Hong Kong ship go everywhere. So what about your museum? What's the plan to connect the museum with on the global stage?
Well, thank you very much indeed, Tian Long. Just to say a few words about COVID. I think, of course, we all do agree that it has been tough years for all of us over the last 2.5, 3 years. One of the brighter moments that I experienced last year was the realization that whilst the museum has been closed for quite some time, and of course the borders were closed for most people, unfortunately, we had about 60% more people from Hong Kong coming into the museum. So I'd like to see these little brilliant moments in life as well, in order to remain strong and continue our business with a good smile and with a good and high spirit as well. So there is some sort of a strange advantage, I guess, in this situation. What we have done over the past 2 years in order to continue to reach out to international audiences, not only Hong Kong, but also international audiences, is for the first time in the history of our museum, started in 2005, as I mentioned earlier. Last year we had 3 exhibitions traveling to Beijing. So we managed to connect with our friends in the capital and show them parts of the story of Hong Kong and how important Hong Kong is, not only for our daily lives, but for many people's daily lives as well. So that's one fantastic thing. If you can't bring the audiences to your museum, bring your collections to the audiences, I would say, which is not always very easy, to be honest with you, but it's worthwhile trying. Secondly, don't look at this guy. Maybe the chap on the right-hand side is more handsome to look at. But anyway, we included this slide to, you can't tell the difference, right? We included this slide in order to indicate, yes, we organized virtual tours not only, but also created something that's on the website for a much longer period of time. If you can't come to the exhibition, we'll make sure that you will know about the exhibition. This is what we have done for Maritime Miracle as well. This was Maritime Crossroads last year, focusing on 2,000 years or 2,500 years of Hong Kong and how important Hong Kong has been for millennia when it comes to this crossroads, these networks of maritime trade. You already mentioned it's global. It's not local, it's global. And that's one of the charms, I think, of our collections as well. We have about 5,000 artifacts, not a huge collection, about 1,200 artifacts on display, but it's all international. It's all this very important element that makes Hong Kong this fabulous city that it is. We also work with Google arts and culture programs in order to digitize more and more of our collections. So if you can't come to the museum, if you don't dare to come, although it's a safe place, please come. If you don't dare to come, you can look at our collections at home and maybe even create your own exhibitions. And when you do, please call us. We'd love to get your input in new exhibitions as well. And then finally, of course, you already mentioned this as well, the organization of lecture series. Yes, ideally physically. I think this is so much nicer and better to see wonderful faces in the audience than talk to a screen and hope that at least your mother is listening. And do this in hybrid forms as well. So I think we learned interesting lessons during COVID times of how maybe to approach our museum work in a new manner, connect with the world via traveling exhibitions, but also via technology. But you still want to see the audiences come to your museum, right? I mean, that's the stimulating force for me, for my staff, and hopefully for you yourself as well, because a museum should be a place where you have your dialogues, where you have your surprises, where you have your concerns maybe even as well. And that's the starting point. That's how we can bring maybe the museum's quality and maybe even our own lives to a higher level as well. And I think I do agree wholeheartedly with Florian when he says, focus on this collaboration. I think when I look at the museum landscape in Hong Kong, it's fascinating. It isn't huge. I come from Amsterdam, where you have dozens of museums in a fairly small space. But it's well defined. And I think it would be fantastic if we could find ways to work together more stringently and more efficiently as museums. So you taxpayers, and actually I pointed myself as well, us taxpayers, we realize your dollar will be used several times. Although we are a private museum with public subvention, I think it's a very important element for all of us to realize. But it's not just economics, it's also contents, it's sharing expertise, and in that way connect with the international world as well, because we have the collections, we have the contents, we have the stories to connect with the global world. More than many other places in the world, I would say. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joost. It's very impressive that you come up with all this project that try to stay connected with on the global stage with audience, with museum world. I think we all have to change, adapt. The world is changing. The COVID has changed everything, and I totally agree that to make effort to send your collection to your audience if they cannot come, and to collaborate, to have more collaboration. That's the key for sort of expand our influence. And now come to our museum, the Hong Kong Palace Museum. We all know that, as you opening remark indicate, that we aim very high. We want to be the first-class museum in the world. Although we are young, we're very ambitious. And we opened in the COVID time. That was unexpected and a huge success, I have to say. So, can you tell us more? COVID is still here. What are the plans or actions that to expand our sort of influence, relevance internationally?
Yes, we survived in the COVID time in the past 2 years.
Survived.
That's why we can deliver the projects on time within budgets. But the challenge is that how to, open our door to attract more visitors. In terms of visitation, because we just opened for 4 months as a new museum, we expect that there will be no shortage of visitors. At least for the first year, there's no problem because 7.5 million population in Hong Kong. There are a lot of museum goers who make frequent visit, and regular visit to the museum. Because I have a dinner with I met the Secretary for Transport and Logistics, Lam Sai Hong. He told me that he has already visited the Hong Kong PM for 4 times. So I think it's good that you can maintain our quality, the exhibition and service. But I think in the long run, non-local visitors, including from mainland and also from overseas, are important to achieve the sustainability of the museum development. And then hopefully the border and then with mainland overseas can be fully reopened in the second half of next year. We don't know, the budget is planned for this one. So we expect that we can contribute around 1 million visitors, I think, that to the Hong Kong Palace Museum, for 12 months. So we are making preparations for receiving non-local visitors next year by scaling up our capacity, just like our ticketing system, our transport facility, and visitor service. And riding on the success of our grand opening in July with wide medium coverage, especially in the mainland, we will continue and step up our marketing and publicity effort, I think, to feature more story about our exhibits and our exhibitions and activity, in particular on social media. Social media is very, very important because in the previous month, mainly our official, channel, television, the online, but social media is very, very important. So we want to extend our audience base beyond Hong Kong. And Joost just mentioned about 2 important points, about virtual exhibitions. Very, very important. Many museums in the world arrange, launch this virtual tour, and then also digitalize their collection online. But I think that, as you know, we just received, that in the last few months, our collection. We haven't yet digitalized this collection. I think we will maybe take some time, I think, that to provide, I think, that exhibition with online. But we have 900 objects from Palace Museum. So actually we have been in active discussion with some both local IT firm, whether we can, they collaborate to produce some, digital program online and for the youth. And also talking about, that our learning activities is also very, very important. I think that's, that we have done very well in the past few months. We organized many lectures. I just want to quote 2 examples that I think that quite interesting, that we present 3 public lectures in January, I think, on the opening exhibitions. In our audience, we can house 300. It's pretty good that we have 300 audience attending the lecture, physically. But we also arrange live stream the 3 lectures in collaboration with an app called Zai Yi. It's basically, I think, in mainland China, in Greater Bay Area. And then for my lecture, I attract 68,000, the live, the audience. I think this is quite encouraging. And I have another lecture for Polytechnic University last month, and was also live streaming, I think, in the mainland, and got, how many visitors? 330,000, 33 万 live stream visitors, it's so powerful, that you can see. So I think that's why, that our angle, our horizon, that I think that we should find good way to engage more online visitors. It's a hybrid connectivity, I think, can provide the museum with a great potential to reach out wider audience.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. speaking about the virtual audience, our discussion is live broadcast by several media right now. I don't know how many visitors are there. Well, thank you all for joining us online. And this is the virtual world. I think we cannot just limit our audience locally. And I think the technology really changed the concept about the museum audience. For people to coming out into our door, we are very happy. But for people who continue to pay attention or visit us online, I think this is also the audience we have to engage, particularly internationally, I think. Now come to, I know the time is limited. Now come to my last question, which is connected with part of this event, the Art Hong Kong. We are all honored to be invited to be part of this event, to contribute to the community's effort to sort of answer the national call that make Hong Kong the center for culture and art, not only nationally but internationally. And I think the success of this Art Hong Kong is a good example. But I'd like to know more. All of you have talked about some of your program and your actions already. But I'd like to know more. In light of this national call, community effort, what are your plans, for your museum to sort of further promote Hong Kong, or to help Hong Kong to become the culture and art center on the global stage? Florian, back to you.
Thank you, Tianlong. I think there are definitely two parallel streams. One is that we will always build upon the tradition at the museum at Hong Kong. We are entering our 70th year, right? And the museum has always been a community center for the Hong Kong local art scene. For us, that is one important stream that we continue. So to promote local artists, to do exhibitions with local artists, to also collect from and with local artists, to build a repository, if you like, of Hong Kong art in Hong Kong and share that with the world. So in the mix of exhibitions, and Louis named a few brand new examples that you are displaying right now as well. So in the mix of things, I think it's very important to show to the world with our international ambitions that there is a strong art scene here, and that we treasure the scene, that we work with the artists, that we collect, record, study, and teach the artists. In parallel to that, as we already said, we curate not just individual exhibitions and education programs, but very much a schedule with a program that looks 2-3 years ahead and a mix of exhibitions that works together. In other words, if we show important art from outside of Hong Kong, it will have to work, promote, be juxtaposed with art from Hong Kong, right, or traditional art from China, right, so that thematically they may be very different, but they work together and they, in some ways, promote one another. And I think the two streams need to be developed together. So sometimes when people ask us, how do we select what we curate? Well, it's a loaded question because it's not me deciding what I like to do in the coming years. No, it's very much about the educational value of each and every project, be it Hong Kong Chinese, regional, or completely international, and then the mix of these projects together. And I think if you multiply that by what Joost does, what you do, what everybody does, right? We have 50 museums or so in Hong Kong. That will show the local community and the world what a strong art and culture hub Hong Kong already is. I mean, we are discussing this together. We are forging this together, right? The iron is hot. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you very much. Yes, to engage our local talent, particularly local artists, I think is a very good approach. Joost, what is your plan?
Yeah, I would love to say a few words about that one as well. As I mentioned earlier, I feel that the Maritime Museum, and I don't want to exclude any of our dear colleagues here, but the museum might be par excellence a place to connect with the world because of the subject matter that we have. Maritime is global. You already mentioned it yourself as well. Well, you might be familiar with the slogan that the Harbourfront Commission uses, bring the harbour to the people and the people to the harbour, create a connectivity there. And I sort of freely translate the policy as it has been brought to us, not only by the current chief executive. I know that the former chief executive really was a very strong advocate for internationalization as well. Bring the world to Hong Kong and Hong Kong to the world. And I think we can do this not only as a maritime museum. Just do this by ourselves would be very ambitious and highly improbable. We do need, as Florian said, and we must and we want to connect with other institutions and do this collectively. You already mentioned the importance of the tourism board. I think it's important that not only us connect with the tourism board, but also the tourism board connects with us. Museums do have an economic impact on society, apart from hopefully educational and content intellectual impact as well. So it's important that we realize as museums we don't need to be too modest about what it is that we represent. We are a force, an important force, and it should be acknowledged as such as well, I would say. When it comes to the Maritime Museum, you may know that outside of the museum we have a particular space that we can use, we are allowed to use as part of the lease agreement to advertise, for instance, our exhibitions. Well, for the Maritime Miracle exhibition we had a Dai that was used by smugglers in the 1980s and 1990s. There's no frozen meat inside anymore. There's no Lexus or Mercedes-Benz anymore. It was an empty one, but still, it told us a good and important story. Well, this space here in the middle, before too long, is going to be used to place the anchor of the largest ship that ever sailed the oceans. Built, to get back to the international dimensions here, built in Japan for a Greek ship owner. The Greek ship owner went belly up, went bankrupt, and then the ship was bought by Island Navigation Company of the Tung family here in Hong Kong. The ship was brought to Hong Kong. It was extended by 70 or 80 meters, and finally the Seawise Giant had a length of 458 meters, only 30 meters shorter than the ICC building, a massive ship. 565,000 that weight ton. We have the anchor, and you can keep this somewhere in a dockyard for the rest of its life. We can also use it as a symbol. Anchor means hope, it means confidence, it means trust, but it also indicates Hong Kong is an international place. Dear tourists, at least 8 billion people on the planet come to Hong Kong and look at what we can offer. And if they don't come, we should go to them, as I mentioned earlier. So I think there are fantastic opportunities. I can't wait to travel to Macau and to Guangzhou and meet my colleagues of the Maritime Museums there and start in the Greater Bay Area, which of course we all know is just a construct. The Greater Bay Area has been there for thousands and thousands of years. Connections between the cities have been there for thousands of years as well. And we want to build on that particular strong connection as well. Apart, of course, from working with the friends and colleagues here in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Joost. I like the symbolism of this anchor. It's steady, it's strength, but it's also big. So in Hong Kong, we have to do big things. Thank you. Louis, I know you are already very busy. We have a lot to do. What is the plan for future?
Oh, many plans, that. I think international cultural exchange, that is our, that our mission, that we become, powerhouse, that for cultural exchange. And firstly, I think that we have understanding that Hong Kong is unique status and strength, just as President Xi Jinping, that in his speech in Hong Kong in the 1st of July, that our open-mindedness, inclusive and pluralistic values, and also our international networking can enable us to connect with the world. And also, you can see, we have a multicultural curatorial team, of museum, that with distinguished scholar, curator, with diverse backgrounds and culture, and then we can overcome language and cultural barriers when communicate with international audience. And then we can make our exhibition program, that offer more engaged, inclusive, and accessible. So I agree that I think that Florian mentioned about that we need to nurture our local artists, and I also and in the meantime I also entirely agree with Joost. We're talking about that our integration with the Greater Bay Area, because Hong Kong has limited cultural resources. But if it's quite local, I think it's good that reflecting our local characteristic, our local culture. I think that just like Hong Kong Palace Museum, why I think that we can so successful, because we can capitalize on Palace Museum, the collections and the cultural resources. So we need to deepen our integrations with mainland, that with mainland museum and in the Greater Bay Area Museum in particular. Just now, that we are planning to, deeper our collaboration with Palace Museum. Not only, that bringing their treasure, but conservation, professional development, and also in future we will have maybe a multi, cultural team with Palace Museum, Hong Kong Palace Museum, and also overseas museum to work together to create a major international show. That's why you need to help to join hands with Palace Museum, to go global. So I think that's very, very important. I think that as you know that we have a number of this kind of cultural exchange, international project in hand from our blockbuster exhibition. So we just opened a Liechtenstein exhibition. And then in April next year, we will work with Cartier, I think, to bring their heritage collection to Hong Kong. And then at the end of the year, and then we will work with the National Gallery in London to showcase their masterpieces, 52 masterpieces. And also, last night I just signed a letter to the Louvre director, I think, to explore whether Louvre can send, a more comprehensive exhibition to Hong Kong, either in 2024 and 2025. And I told you that it's possible that we can find a sponsorship. It's very exciting. It's very important. So that's why, that to me, I think that Hong Kong is well positioned, I think, as well, that to play a key role, I think, in support of, that become an art and culture, the hub, the foreign beach between China and the rest of the world.
Thank you, Luis. I know you keep me busy. So it's great to know that that we, each one of our museums in Hong Kong that has a very ambitious global vision, particularly from listening from three gentlemen like you about your plan to not only make your museum more internationally relevant, but also together, as a team, that we can make Hong Kong museums stand up, more notable on the global stage. And our collaboration with you guys, particularly the Hong Kong University Art Museum and Hong Kong Maritime Museum for the opening, is a great example. I'd like to thank you for, particularly for helping us with our effort to celebrate the Hong Kong art collecting and history. I think I want to give the audience an opportunity. I think it's not easy to get three of you together on the same stage. So I'd like to see if any audience has questions. We have one already. For any question for three of you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Very, very good. I have a question. When I listened to your introduction to your museum, I was thinking, do you have any plan to jointly plan to promote Hong Kong's museum. 3 of you, or even more museums in Hong Kong. For Hong Kong, it's a very special place where the East meets the West. Do you have any plan jointly promote Hong Kong's museum to Hong Kong people or even to the world? Thank you.
Yeah, we do. I think that coordinated by the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, every year we have a museum festival. That we join hands together to promote our program. And also, I think just, that also every 2 years, and the LCSD, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, organize a major international museum events called Museum Summit. Originally, they planned to organize this summit this year. Because of the COVID, they're going to, I think, that postpone this summit to March next year. During this summit, I think that we will speak, and then we will organize visit. I think that just something to attract more international audience.
Thank you. Actually, Joost and I also, we meet quite a bit to speak about collaboration and outreach. And we are, I think, about to start a bigger group of museum directors and chief curators who meet regularly and discuss joint interests and strategies, if you like. I also think that beyond the great efforts that LCSD has, shown over the years, again, that we can reach out more jointly by creating maybe something that is like Time Out, where that magazine or web-based presence I would promote for the future, where people can see what is going on in Hong Kong. Hong Kongers can see what is going on very easily. Visitors can see what is going on in Hong Kong. Maybe the airport could provide such a platform with Wi-Fi for visitors who come into Hong Kong. Maybe Cathay Pacific or other airlines could play a little video clip for visitors who fly into Hong Kong. To update such a video would be more troublesome, but to provide pre-Wi-Fi at the airport and play in the upcoming and ongoing cultural projects. And we speak about museums, but there's a lot of performing art. There's a lot of high-class art and culture going on beyond our good efforts. So I think there's a lot of room to do that, and I think we will discuss a lot more together. And I think, yes, we will do that with LCSD. We all work with LCSD, and we will hopefully do that with LegCo and beyond and reach more people.
Yeah, just very briefly. Thank you very much indeed for your question. I think it's a very good one, and it's one that one might think is very easy to respond to, and luckily Louis and Florian already did so. Just to give you a little sense, when it comes to the museum landscape in Hong Kong, you have the LCSD museums. Of course, you have the West Kowloon Cultural District. And we as a maritime museum, and maybe you as a university museum, we are a little bit of an oddball situation, if I may call it that way. We started as a private museum. Thank God we have public subvention, so we consider ourselves rather bluntly a prime example of public-private partnership. Lots of peace in this sentence, but that's sort of how we see each other, ourselves. But we're not part of the LCSD community. We work with our colleagues, we cherish them, we respect them, we talk to them. So what I'm trying to say is there, I think, is a need to find some sort of an infrastructure, if you'd like, a platform, you already alluded to that, a platform to connect on directors level, if I may call it this way, then find support via, for instance, the government. CSTB has now been installed, so culture, sports and tourism together, which is crucial, I think, for our sector here as well, because we need the tourism board, as you mentioned earlier, to bring this to our audiences outside. And I think that's the various steps that we need to take. When people come to the airport and be informed either in the plane or at the airport, fantastic. Can you imagine hundreds of thousands of people per month or maybe per week? But I think I would like to bring it one step further. Inform the tourism bureau in the Netherlands, in Iceland, in wherever you are in the world, that Hong Kong is the place to go to. And that, I think, should be the ambition for all of us, to promote the city, this fabulous port city that I cherish so much already. Only 20 months here, but I love the city. And I think it's worthwhile to promote it this way. So thank you very much for your question. Thanks.
Thank you. One question here, please. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I love everything that I hear. I wanted to kind of broaden the discussion around the ecosystem in Hong Kong. So now we have great museums, we have a thriving art community. We also need, to have the talent pool in terms of especially homegrown talent, as well as collectors, right? So on the question of the talent pool, I'm wondering how the museums can kind of work together to put together programs to, kind of bring up our new youth, right? So whether it's curators, historians, we have great curators here, but, kind of looking forward, right? So that's one part of it. I think the other part is also looking at the collector space, right? So you have great cities with, great collections. I think we need to create a hub where we can kind of bring all these collectors together. And, kind of if we look around even this exhibition, there are great collectors in Hong Kong, but everyone's kind of doing their own thing. So I'm trying to think of how do we make this scalable, kind of have everyone work together. So would love your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is indeed a very good question. Who want to be the first one?
I would love to take the first one because you speak to my heart. Obviously, I work first of all for the university, and I'm in the process of developing also more formal programs, working on more postgraduate education. We teach museum studies and art history already, of course, and the School of Humanities is developing more programs now. So the idea is exactly the one that you refer to, is to develop a local pool of talent to exchange with other institutions, to keep it exciting and fresh and real, and benchmark at least as much as we can. But new programs, when they are developed in Hong Kong, they are already benchmarked. So there is a quality control that goes into it from day one. And this is really the ambition. It's a growing industry in Hong Kong, and we are ready to provide the talent. It's Hong Kong grown, Hong Kong taught, and we teach in English. We can very easily involve students from other areas. We expect a huge pool of applicants from the north, but also from Southeast Asia and other regions. There aren't that many programs in the region. Hong Kong is the international art hub in the region, so we are quite optimistic and ready to go. We will involve the pool of collectors you named too, but I leave that question for somebody else. Thank you.
Yeah, just briefly adding to what Florian mentioned, and I'm absolutely fascinated by your initiative, Florian, to really start museum studies and create that pool here locally. Just to give you an idea, when it comes to the Hong Kong Maritime Museum, we're a mid-sized museum, I would say. We have about 32, 33 FTE. Last year, we had 8 interns, which is quite a large number for our small institution. 8 interns from various universities here, but also from universities abroad. Hong Kong students abroad, coming back to Hong Kong and being an intern at the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. I'm sure you work with interns as well, the other institutions. And that, of course, is also a very important element in creating that pool. It might be that they haven't studied museum studies yet, but once they got interested in what it is that they do in museums, hopefully that will be the next generation that can take the reins from this Guilo. And then, you have a Hong Kong person who is running the Hong Kong Maritime Museum and speaks Cantonese much more fluently than I with my 3 words, and speaking a strange dialect as well that nobody understands. So we're working on this, but I think it's a great question, and we should never, ever stop working on this. It's the future. The next generations are the future for our institutions as well. So we would be foolish not to pay a lot of attention and a lot of money as well into all of this as well. And when it comes to the collector's side, yeah, I'm too fresh here to really give you a well-based opinion about how we could create that infrastructure. Firstly, I guess, amongst collectors themselves. What is that you do? What is that I do? And then next step, how to connect. And I think the Palace Museum actually does a fantastic job, because one of the galleries that you have focus on collectors in Hong Kong and how these collections came about and how they don't stick in the vaults of the people in their homes, but also be made public through your wonderful institution. And that might be giving a little sort of a leverage to you to maybe respond as well, Louise.
Thank you, Joost, for your favorable comment on our gallery. Actually, Hong Kong has a very good, wonderful collector community. Many collectors collect significant, art treasure, and also they make great contribution to the study, preservation, promotion, of Chinese art and culture. And I think in the last few years, there are 3 major donations making available to the Hong Kong Museum of Art under the joint support of the previous Chief Executive, including Wu Guanzhong, Ji Luolou, Zheng Guanlao. They are world-class, exhibitions. I think that if we do better, there will be more similar collection, I think, donated to, the Museum of Art, the Hong Kong U Museum. So that's, I think, that we need to do more. Starting, I think that Joost mentioned about our Gallery 6 about the Hong Kong collecting is a good start. So this gallery, our original plan, I think, is not display our own collection, but we have already collected so many. So at least there will be in the next 1 or 2 years, we will display their work. But after the showing this collection, I think we would like to explore collaboration with local collectors to showing their works. Maybe I think I will also work with other museums, work together.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that. So it's not just about receiving donations and housing collections. Of course, we are all working on that to keep the incredible art collecting, these incredible collections in Hong Kong for the world. But we also couldn't do the exhibitions we do without the collectors. So the museums and the collectors are very tight. We have 3 temporary exhibitions on at the moment. All of them have loans from local collectors. From our collection, from local collectors, donated pieces that may be donated one day. The collaboration is alive and well. And of course, there are collector groups that meet among themselves. So I think Hong Kong is actually quite a good example where that network strikes me as particularly strong.
And just very briefly, in addition, I should have mentioned right from the outset that the Hong Kong Maritime Museum was established by a few individuals. And these few individuals were not only working in the maritime community, but also had their own collections. So the museum couldn't start without those people being collectors. So you see the importance and the connection there between one area and the other area as well. But to elaborate on, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm aware of our time. I think I'd like to thank all of you for your thought, for your remarks, and for your strategic plan. I know each one of you play a very important role in leading the museums in Hong Kong and for the future too. So it's been a wonderful conversation. And I hope in the future we can have more similar conversations, not only 3 of you, maybe more. I think we have 50 museums, right? So I think if we have a regular dialogue among all of us and come up with some kind of teamwork plan, I think together we can definitely make Hong Kong great in terms of the museum world. I'd also like to thank our audience for your participation and our audience online. Thank you very much.
Thank you all the doctors and speakers for the insightful sharing today. Again, thank you for coming to the Art Hong Kong International Art Forum. This afternoon, we will have the last session in Cantonese called The Contemporary Relevance of Hong Kong Archaeology, and we welcome everyone to join. This concludes our session today. Please make sure you take all your belongings with you when you leave. Thank you. May have 各位歡迎大家嚟到 Art Hong Kong 嘅 International Art Forum。而家咧個 screen 上面咧有